Harlem, 1934. You could feel the air shift when Bumpy Johnson stepped through that doorway. The kind of silence that doesn't welcome, it warns. 15 white men in pointed hoods froze mid-sentence, hands twitching toward the weapons hidden under their robes. They weren't expecting visitors during their clandestine gathering inside a crumbling warehouse by the Harlem River. Not on the edge of his block, not in his home. The Grand Dragon began to rise. Boy, you just made the biggest mist he never finished. What unfolded over the next 8 minutes would echo through history. 15 men walked in. Only 3 would crawl out and spend a lifetime haunted by it. Because that night, Bumpy Johnson taught the Klan that Harlem wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a kingdom, and kings don't ask for permission. To understand what led to that moment, you've got to feel Harlem in the early months of 1934. The Great Depression carved deep wounds into Black America, and Harlem was bleeding. Half the neighborhood was out of work. Tenants got eviction notices instead of paychecks. Children learned hunger early, and while hope was folding, the Ku Klux Klan saw a door cracking open. They weren't just hiding in the South anymore. They had touched down in northern cities, New York, Detroit, Chicago, stalking the very places Black families had come seeking safety. In Harlem, their tactics had evolved. These cowards couldn't march in daylight. They moved like shadows. Threats left under doors, crosses ignited under moonlight, businesses vandalized into silence. No faces, no arrests, no help. And the NYPD? A ghost. Reports vanished. Some precincts didn't respond, others were rumored to be part of it. Harlem's leaders grew desperate. Pastors prayed on Sundays and slept with pistols beneath their pillows. Shopkeepers stacked their counters with protection, not products. Parents linked arms when walking their children to school. The Klan's grip wasn't brute strength. It was fear. And fear was winning. Except there was one man no one frightened. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson was only 28, but Harlem already knew his name. Bumpy wasn't the average gangster. He came to Harlem a decade earlier, a fighter sharpening claws in back alleys and prison yards. But Bumpy gave back. When landlords tried to throw families onto the street, he paid their rent. When corrupt cops squeezed Black businesses, Bumpy made sure those cops got reassigned, permanently. When rival crews crossed into Harlem thinking they saw a gold mine, they left on stretchers. Bumpy wasn't just feared, he was trusted. To Harlem, he wasn't a criminal. He was a sentinel. He didn't ask for thanks. Respect was the only currency he dealt in. And when the Klan brought their sick fire to Harlem's doorstep, Bumpy didn't blink. He took it personal. February 7th, 1934, the night before everything broke. Inside the back room of Small's Paradise, one of the hottest jazz joints on 135th Street, Bumpy nursed a quiet drink when Marcus, his sharpest informant, stepped inside. Light-skinned, smart, and unshakable, Marcus could blend in where no Black man should have been. He looked rattled. "Mr. Johnson, you're going to want to hear this." Bumpy nodded for him to sit. "That Klansman you told me to shadow? Name's William Hawkins. I've been on him 3 days, and tonight he made his move." Marcus leaned in. He met up with a dozen white men in luxury sedans, out-of-state plates. "I followed them to a warehouse down by 145th. I counted 15. They're meeting right now." Marcus placed a notebook on the table. "License plates too. Connecticut, Jersey, the Bronx. These boys aren't from around here. They're organized." Bumpy scanned the notes. 15 men. Abandoned waterfront warehouse, far enough from foot traffic to go unnoticed, close enough to key bridges for a quick escape. "They bring anything with them?" Marcus swallowed. 6-foot wooden cross, gasoline cans, every one of them was strapped. His voice turned solemn. "They're not talking anymore, Mr. Johnson. They're planning." Bumpy said nothing. The rage in his silence said everything. Bumpy reached into his pocket, counted 2 crisp hundreds, passed them to Marcus. "You were never there. You didn't follow nobody. Got it?" Marcus understood. This was above his pay grade now. He nodded and was gone in seconds. For hours, Bumpy sat alone, hands folded, mind turning. His lieutenants offered backup, asked what weapons to load, how many men to bring. Bumpy shook his head. "This ain't about firepower," he murmured. "This is about principle, and principle's gotta walk in alone." Illinois Gordon, his right hand, tried one last time. "Bump, it's suicide. They're planning something serious. That many men, that many weapons." Bumpy cut him off with a slow grin so cold it made your blood thin. "They expect ghosts. That's why I'm walking out and they're not." February 8th, 1934, 11:30 p.m. The wind howled down Harlem's narrow streets as Bumpy Johnson stepped into the dark. Gray wool suit, long black coat, fedora pulled low. Beneath that coat, something waited, not fear, not doubt. As the city froze at 28 degrees, Bumpy walked steadily east, past quiet brownstones, past sleeping buildings, toward the forgotten border, where Harlem's bold color faded into industrial grays, where life ended and emptiness began. This was where the city dumped its secrets. Tonight, it held 15 of them. At 11:35, Bumpy reached the warehouse. A looming, three-story slab of brick, once a textile factory, now just another urban skeleton. Its walls had swallowed voices before. It was perfect, forgotten, remote, close to the 145th Street Bridge, an ideal hideout for men too cowardly to commit terror in daylight. Bumpy surveyed quietly. 2 fancy cars, Marcus was right, Connecticut and New Jersey plates. Luxury wheels parked where their owners didn't belong. Front door, boarded tight. Back entrance, ajar. They were inside. The rats felt safe in the dark. He checked his watch. 11:40. Pulled his coat a little tighter as his breath rose like smoke. He listened. Men's voices, low and smug. Furniture scraping. One of them chuckled. Bumpy drew a breath deep enough to hold purpose. At 11:45, he walked straight toward the building. No hesitation. No second thoughts, no knocking, just a hand on the rusting doorknob and the quiet push of destiny walking into its reckoning. The basement glowed with firelight. Kerosene lamps hung heavy, casting flickers over white hoods and hate-filled faces. 15 men in robes stood around a table crowded with maps of Harlem. In the corner, a 6-foot wooden cross leaned like a promise waiting to burn. They were organizing, giving orders. Thompson hit the church after its Wednesday service. Then the Grand Dragon froze mid-sentence. The room silenced like a candle snuffed. Bumpy Johnson was standing right there in the doorway. 15 startled faces turned. They'd picked this warehouse precisely to avoid being seen, and yet somehow, impossibly, a black man was inside, wearing a suit, calm as Sunday, staring at them like they were trespassing. Robert Garrison blinked first. Klan orchestrator, slim, wire-rimmed glasses, Connecticut-born businessman who'd lit crosses from Baltimore to Boston, never faced resistance, never expected to. He pulled off his hood, wore a smirk that didn't touch his eyes. "Boy, you just made the biggest mist." Bumpy raised one hand, still commanding. Garrison stopped like someone flipped a switch. "Before you finish that thought," Bumpy said, like iron wrapped in velvet, "know this. You came to the wrong place." One Klansman, young and jittery, moved for his gun. Bumpy didn't flinch. "If you draw, shoot fast. Miss that first shot, you won't get another." The boy's hand froze in mid-reach. Garrison pressed. 15-1. "You've got no backup. Maybe a piece under that coat, but you won't lift it in time. Turn around while you still can." Bumpy tilted his head, just a little. "That's your second mistake, thinking I came here to talk." He stepped deeper into the room, slow, calm, hands still empty. "You've spent weeks terrorizing Harlem, igniting crosses, smashing windows, threatening lives. You thought because you had skin, guns, and hoods, no one would dare fight back." Another step, his voice didn't waver. "You were wrong." Garrison flinched. "Listen, boy, stop calling me that," Bumpy said flat. "My name is Bumpy Johnson, remember it. 'Tis everyone in your rotten little brotherhood's about to." A thick-assented Klansman stepped forward, Southern, angry. We don't need to hear no speech. Let's kill this uppity. But he never got the rest out. In one motion, Bumpy was on him. No roars, no flare, just cold precision. A punch collapsed the man's throat, silence twisted into agony. Another Klansman, the young one, finally drew his gun as panic overtook him. He fired, but he missed. The bullet punched into a wall. Quick as lightning, Bumpy flung a nearby kerosene lamp into the kid's chest. Glass burst. Flames raced. The man fell back screaming, cloak on fire, pistol forgotten. The room exploded not from noise, but chaos. Chairs upended, guns drawn. But Bumpy stood at the only exit, and they'd trapped themselves with him. Here's what they didn't know. Bumpy didn't just grow up fighting, he survived it. Not corner brawls, real fights, prison fights. He'd learned from lifers who taught him one thing: pretty moves don't win fights, brutality does. He didn't swing wide. He didn't show off. He targeted joints, necks, eyes, knees, anything that ended resistance fast. Amid the scramble, Garrison screamed orders, "Spread out!" He's just one man, but it was like trying to organize a flood. Bumpy grabbed hold of the wooden cross, heavy oak, 6 feet of irony. He swung. It landed against Garrison's skull, a meaty wet crack. The man dropped, didn't move again. 3 men lunged at once. Bumpy turned the cross from club to spear, buried it deep in a gut, used torque to swing wide, caught a jaw. The third grabbed at Bumpy's coat. Mistake. From his pocket came a straight razor, small but sure. One clean slice opened the man's face from eye to jaw. Blood came fast, messy. The fire had caught now. Flames tickled the rafters. Smoke filled lungs, blurred edges. But Bumpy didn't care. He owned the layout. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. He moved like the smoke parted for him, like the room belonged to him. One by one, they dropped. Fists, friendly fire, fire itself. By the time it was quiet, Bumpy was the only one still standing. It took 8 minutes. 8 minutes to reduce a secret war council into a nightmare. When the air finally lightened, 3 men still clung to breath, barely, battered, burned, broken. One whimpered on the floor. 2 crawled toward the stairs. On that soaked, burning floor lay 12, dead by flame, fists, panic. Bumpy stood near the ruins of what they'd tried to build. Maps blackened, a half-burned cross collapsing onto ash. His clothes were ripped. Blood streaked his face. Some of it wasn't his, but his eyes never wavered. He walked past the bleeding wreckage to one of the survivors, a kid no more than 25, sobbing shamelessly. He knelt and spoke low. "What's your name?" "Patrick. Patrick Murphy." "You from here, Patrick?" "No, sir, Bronx." "You got family?" Patrick nodded. Bumpy pulled him close by the collar until their eyes met. "Then take this story home. Tell your clan what happened. Tell them Bumpy Johnson walked into a room of armed men and walked out alone. Tell them what happens when they try Harlem." Then he released him. Patrick scrambled out on all fours like hell was licking his boots. Bumpy turned to the other 2, still alive only by cowardice. "Same goes for you. Harlem isn't a target. Not now. Not ever." And they fled. 3 broken messengers carrying a warning back to the depths they came from. Bumpy didn't rush. He stayed for a moment longer, standing at the heart of the room the clan had claimed. He looked around, the charred remains of their vicious plans, the cross now twisted and burning slow, the corpses of 12 men who thought fear made them untouchable. He stepped through the smoke, past overturned chairs and scattered revolvers, and walked back out into the brutal February night. Behind him, the flames roared higher into the sky. The Harlem River wind carried the smoke east, and Bumpy vanished into that shattered boundary between the ruin and the city, heading home to the soul of Harlem. By sunrise, the warehouse was gone, a pile of smoldering brick. Fire crews combed the ruins, searching for anything to explain what had happened. They uncovered 12 bodies, some burned beyond recognition, others still fresh with bruises, broken bones, bullet wounds, crushed windpipes, white robes tangled in the ashes, pamphlets soaked with soot, and underneath the wreckage, maps of Harlem. Churches circled, businesses marked. The cross, melted and collapsed inward, still bore the smell of gasoline. NYPD sent men with shiny badges and stiff collars. They interviewed Patrick and the other two survivors, men now strapped to hospital beds, bandaged like ghosts. The answers were hollow. Who attacked you? Too dark. Couldn't see. It all happened so fast. The detectives knew better. So did their boss. Detective Sullivan sat in front of his captain hours later, laid down a file thin as honesty. 12 dead white men, all wearing illegal robes, caught mid-plot to attack Harlem. 3 survivors scared stiff. The captain didn't lift his eyes from the report. "What's your recommendation?" Sullivan exhaled. He understood the real question. "We dig deeper. This explodes. The papers hear it. We're done. They'll print the Klans operating in our streets. City Hall won't stand for that. The mayor sure won't. Neither will the voters." Silence. Then the captain slid the report into a drawer. Case closed. Accidental fire. Bums squatting in a condemned building. Illegal gathering. No charges. Sullivan nodded and stood. "Yes, sir." No one asked again. No one leaked a word. And just like that, the city acted like nothing had happened. Like those 12 charred corpses were strangers. Like nobody knew why they gathered. But the warning lived on. Those 3 survivors, they told everyone, in whispers and stutters and sleepless flashbacks. Patrick Murphy limped back to the Bronx, eyes wide like they'd never close again. In quiet halls and locked-door meetings, they told the truth. Harlem wasn't theirs, not anymore. Word spread sideways, fast. Jersey heard, Connecticut heard, chapters up the coast heard, and with every telling, the story twisted bigger. Some swore Bumpy killed all 15 with bare hands. Others said he lit the fire himself, let them burn on purpose. Some claimed he lined them up and made them beg. The truth didn't matter anymore. The effect did. Within 7 days, the Klan shadow campaign in Harlem went silent. No more smashed windows. No more secret threats. No more crosses flickering on rooftops. White-robed hate had realized something it never believed before. Harlem fights back, and Bumpy Johnson had drawn the line in blood and fire. He taught them a new kind of fear, because for the first time they weren't untouchable. They bled like anyone else. And Harlem? Harlem wasn't afraid anymore. The people walked straighter, slept easier. Not because the police cracked down, they didn't. Not because City Hall intervened, it didn't. It was because one man stood up when no one else dared. That night became folklore. It outgrew newspapers, outran memory. For decades, people told it, in barber shops, basements, jazz halls, and family tables. About the night, Bumpy Johnson walked straight into the Klan's den, alone, and emerged untouched, leaving behind 12 bodies and a legacy sealed in fire. But to Harlem's families, it meant more. It meant someone had their back. Someone saw them, protected them. Not because it was noble or strategic, but because it was right. To other gangsters, Bumpy's name carried weight before, but now it echoed. He wasn't just a player in the numbers racket, he was myth. Principle wrapped in muscle. To outsiders, those who strutted into black neighborhoods thinking their skin was armor, it meant hesitation, fear. Because from that day on, Harlem wasn't a soft mark. It was a neighborhood under royal protection, and there were limits to disrespect. Bumpy didn't teach them manners, he taught them consequences. Years later, a reporter asked him, pulled him aside in the 1960s after Harlem had changed and people were starting to write books instead of just whispering stories. "Is it true?" the reporter asked. "Did you really go into that meeting alone?" Bumpy didn't smile warm. He smiled cold, that same February ice grin. "Let me explain something about respect," he said. "You don't earn it by being patient. You don't get it by pretending you didn't notice the insult. People start respecting you when it hurts too much not to." He paused. "Yeah, I went in. Alone. And yeah, most of them didn't walk out, because they brought fear into my house. I showed them real fear. Any regrets? The reporter asked. Bumpy's voice didn't waver. Only one, he said. I should have sent a louder message, but 3 survivors was enough. They spoke loud for me. And they did. Because the Klan stay gone, no more meetings, no more plans, not in Harlem, not again. They learned respect the hard way. Harlem didn't cower. Harlem was a place you left alone, unless you wanted to leave in pieces, because fear is only a weapon until someone decides it isn't. That night, a choice was made, not by the police, not by the city, but by one man who decided his community wouldn't be prey. February 8th, 1934. 15 men in white hoods walked into a basement with guns and gasoline, thinking they would launch terror under cover of darkness. One man followed them in. No gang, no backup, just purpose, just rage hardened into discipline, and fists trained for war. 8 minutes later, 12 of them were dead. 3, the lucky ones, dragged what was left of themselves out into the freezing night. And Bumpy Johnson? He turned his back on the smoke, the blood, and the bodies, and walked home. Not just to Harlem's streetlights, but to what they represented: life, dignity, peace. That night didn't just end a threat. It lit something in the people Bumpy had fought for. It didn't come in headlines. The city tried to keep it quiet, but the story still pulsed through sidewalks and stoops, because it wasn't just Bumpy's fight. It was a message wrapped in legend. You don't have to take it. You don't have to be a victim. Fear is a chain, and that night, Harlem broke it. This wasn't just a tale from the underworld. It was what happens when one man decides enough is enough. When protecting your neighborhood becomes more than pride, it becomes purpose. That was Bumpy's true power. For generations, the legend lingered. Some heard it across barber chairs, others through whispered stories over kitchen tables. It would grow, shift, repeat. Some said Bumpy couldn't have done it. The odds were too high. Others swore he used fire and fear like weapons. But whether fact or fable, one truth held: the Klan never came back. Because whatever they saw in that basement, whoever they became lying in the dark, choking on smoke, bleeding from wounds they never expected, that stayed with them. And no rally, robe, or rope could make them forget what Harlem had taught them that night. The Klan thought Harlem was soft. They believed black people would bow their heads, stay silent, let hatred smash their windows and scar their churches. They were wrong, because that night they didn't just find resistance, they found a reckoning, and they bled like anyone else. It wasn't law that stopped them. It wasn't politics. It wasn't talks or negotiations. It was a king walking alone into the fire and reminding evil it doesn't reign here. Because when you make a kingdom of your block, your street, your people, you defend it like your soul depends on it. Bumpy Johnson understood that better than anyone. So if you've made it this far, remember, this isn't just some old mob tale. It's not a footnote in black history. It's a moment carved out of fearlessness, a reminder that silence is a choice and so is action. That justice may not always arrive in a badge or a courtroom. Sometimes it wears a fedora and a long coat, and it comes alone. The Klan never understood the difference between fear and respect. Harlem taught them, and the next time anyone thinks they can walk into a neighborhood like this and take what they want, they'll pause, because somewhere in the shadows there might be another Bumpy.